No, dear viewers. The way Game of Thrones Season 8 showed the Night King dying at the hands of Arya Stark was not how George R. R. Martin ever intended this terrifying character to fall. In The Winds of Winter, the Night King's end was meant to be more tragic, more poetic, and far more disturbing. And today, I want to explain that version of the story. And when I usually talk about Game of Thrones fan theories, and honestly, most of them have a very low chance of ever becoming true. But if George R. R. Martin ever finishes The Winds of Winter, what you're about to hear is very close to how this story was originally meant to end. About 9 years ago, right after Season 6 aired, something interesting happened. On the A Song of Ice and Fire subreddit, discussion began around information connected to George R. R. Martin's upcoming books. At the time, a small group of readers had early access to parts of Fire and Blood for review purposes. And from those discussions, a name quietly began spreading among hardcore fans: the Night's King. At that point, The Winds of Winter still wasn't published, so D&D, the showrunners, asked George R. R. Martin for a broad outline of how the story would eventually end. And here's something important to remember. In the main book series, we've only seen small groups of White Walkers so far. The Night King has never officially appeared in the books, but George R. R. Martin did explain how this figure would fall and who would be responsible. What we saw on HBO was not that version, so don't worry. Today, I'll tell you the original story. But before we continue, hit the like button right now, so YouTube's algorithm actually shows this video to Game of Thrones fans like you. Now, remember the character called the Night's King from Fire and Blood? This figure does not exist in written history. His story survives only through ancient northern legends, passed from generation to generation in Winterfell. After the first long night, after Brandon the Builder helped raise the wall, Winterfell, and the Night Fort, during the Age of Heroes, a terrible and shameful event took place at the wall. The 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch once saw a woman in the far north. Her skin was white as the moon. Her eyes burned bright blue. Her body was colder than ice itself. She moved through snowstorms freely. She did not fear the cold. She was a White Walker. Her name was the Corpse Queen. The Lord Commander, once a fearless and honorable warrior, fell in love with her completely. He gave her his loyalty, and eventually, his soul. Then something unthinkable happened. Leading the White Walkers himself, he turned against the Night's Watch. He captured the ancient castle of the Night Fort, declared himself the Night's King, and crowned the undead woman as his Night Queen. For 13 years they ruled. Children born of life and death were sacrificed beneath a weirwood tree. Brothers of the Night's Watch were captured and returned as the undead. Finally, Brandon, the Breaker of House Stark, and Joramun, King Beyond the Wall, united their forces. They stormed the Night Fort. They defeated the White Walkers. And the wall was reclaimed by men. But the Night's King was not executed. Instead, his name was erased. His history destroyed. His identity forgotten. So no future brother of the Night's Watch would ever know that such a shame had once existed. Now you might be wondering, why am I telling you this ancient horror story while talking about the ending of Game of Thrones? Be patient, because Season 8 wasn't the first time humanity fought the White Walkers. Thousands of years earlier, the Children of the Forest made a terrible mistake, and the first long night began. Since the very first Game of Thrones book, a prophecy has existed. Azor Ahai, a prince or a princess destined to bring light against the cold darkness of death. Different people interpreted this prophecy in different ways. Melisandre believed it was Stannis Baratheon. Beric Dondarrion wielded a flaming sword. And in Season 8, Melisandre even turned the Dothraki blades into living lightbringers. But the original legend tells a much darker story. Azor Ahai tried to forge 3 swords. The first 2 failed. Then he realized a sacrifice was required. His beloved wife, Nissa, opened her chest willingly. Azor Ahai drove the burning sword into her heart, and from her pain, Lightbringer was born. With that blade, the White Walkers were defeated. The wall was raised. And Azor Ahai became the first Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Now, think carefully. The 13th Lord Commander didn't fall in love with a random undead woman, that blue-eyed queen. was Nissa Nissa. Azor Ahai saw his sacrificed wife again, thousands of years later, and the weight of that memory broke him. That ancient hero became the Night King. In The Winds of Winter, George R.R. Martin was building toward this cruel twist, the greatest hero of the past returning as the greatest villain of the present, and to defeat him, a new Azor Ahai would be required, a new Lightbringer. Yes, Jon Snow would kill Daenerys Targaryen, not because of madness, not because of politics, but to save humanity from eternal winter. That sacrifice was never properly explored in the show. Instead, we got rushed logic and Arya Stark ending the long night. And sadly, that may be all we ever get, because at this point, the Winds of Winter may never come. Now tell me in the comments, do you want a full video focused only on Azor Ahai, his prophecy, his identity, and why George R.R. Martin never wanted a simple hero? And if you enjoy deep lore, dark theories, and book-accurate Game of Thrones stories, subscribe to the Story Chamber. It genuinely motivates me to make more of these stories for you. I'll see you in the next one.